Yo, what is good, E7 fam? Pat here, back with another how to play video. And in this one, we'll be talking about the much requested god killer himself, Straze. As with all of my how to play videos, I'll be going super in depth and covering almost everything you could want to know about the character, including things like stats, skills, possible endgame equipment builds for you to try out, as well as some PvP matchup knowledge if that's your thing. So as always, with our introduction out of the way, let's move right on to Straze's stats. Straze is a dark warrior of the Taurus zodiac symbol. And yes, throughout this video, I'll be pronouncing his name as Straze because that's how the characters in the game pronounce his name.
Straze was like a teacher and a father to me. But ever since he got that weird blade, Faustus, he changed.
Regardless, he is a dark warrior of the Taurus zodiac symbol, which means he shares a stat line with Sigret, Euphine, and the collab hero Jack O'Valentine. Taking a closer look at his stats, he has 1,228 attack, 5,784 health, 109 speed, 553 defense, 23% critical hit chance, 165% critical hit damage, 3% dual attack chance, and no effectiveness or effect resistance. This translates to higher than average starting attack, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage. His speed is ever so slightly above average as well. Where Straze really falters is his lower than average health and defense, especially for a warrior. As an assumption for the rest of this video, I'm going to assume that you have this character with a triple S imprint that gives him an additional 18% attack. This is because imprints for Straze are gained by purchasing the item Reflections of Dead Gods, which you can get from the Transmit Stone shop for 10 gold Transmit Stones each. Considering they're going to always be there and they will never go away, eventually you should have Straze as a triple S imprint. As a bit of trivia before moving on to the skills section, in the English dub of Epic 7, Straze is voiced by one of the very best voiceover artists in the industry, in Crispin Freeman. You can hear him as all versions of Charles in Epic 7, and you can also hear him as characters such as Itachi Uchiha from Naruto, Winston from Overwatch, and Togasa from one of my favorite anime of all time, Ghost in the Shell. In the Japanese dub of Epic 7, however, Straze is voiced by Hiroki Yasumoto, who you can hear as Chad in the currently airing Bleach: The Thousand Year Blood War, as well as fighting game characters Guile from Street Fighter and Raven from one of my personal favorites, Guilty Gear.
Your ruin fast approaches.
Straze's S1 is Powerful Strike. It has a 1x attack multiplier. Additionally, it increases the combat readiness of the user by 20%. Fairly standard multiplier, fairly standard additional effect.
The time has come to blight the world with horror.
Straze's S2 is Destructive Gaze. You acquire 1 soul upon use, and it has a 3-turn cooldown. It is an AoE attack with a 0.9x attack multiplier. This move dispels 2 buffs from all enemies. This move also ignores effect resistance of any targets that have lower attack than Straze's attack. The damage on this move also increases by 20% for each person missing on the enemy team. That is to say that the damage increases by 20% if there are only 3 enemies, 40% if there are only 2 enemies, and finally, it gets a 60% damage increase if only 1 enemy remains.
Save your breath. I shall present you with a chilling chaos.
2 debuff removal is kinda standard at this point for an AoE dispel in Epic 7. The fact that it ignores effect resistance in a lot of scenarios, though, makes it stand out as one of the better ones. Also, this move hits for some really serious damage if there are only 2 or less enemies on the enemy team. Straze's S3 is his signature skill, Star Extinction. You acquire 3 souls upon use, and it has a 5 to 6 turn cooldown depending on Molagora. It is an AoE attack with a 0.95x attack multiplier. This move penetrates 30% defense of the enemy that has the highest maximum health. This penetration rate can be increased by 3.5% of the difference in attack between Straze's current attack and the attack of the highest health enemy. Put another way, the defense penetration rate of this move increases by 1% for roughly every 28.57 attack that Straze has more than the highest health opponent. In short, Straze gets another 70% defense penetration on this move as long as he has 2,000 or more attack than the enemy with the highest health. This is a lot better than the previous number of 3% of the difference in attack, which usually was somewhere awkwardly around 2,400 or more attack than the opponent. For some reason, by the way, this move also grants Straze invincibility for one turn, and it was recently buffed so that it cannot trigger a counter attack.
Destiny cannot escape my sword. The time has come to blight the world with horror.
I don't know about all of you, but I really think that's one of the coolest looking S3s in this entire game. Star Extinction, and to some extent his S2 here, Destructive Gaze, should be fairly indicative of what Straze is all about. He preys upon units who have significantly less attack than him by either denying them buffs or outright killing them in one hit. Star Extinction is pretty much the game's premier tank busting move at this point, especially after its most recent round of buffs. If the enemy team is playing a lot of high health heroes or has drafted a knight that is most likely wearing something like, say, Aureus, he's pretty much going to be your go-to guy. The challenge in using this character in PvP comes from his Taurus Zodiac symbol, which we talked about in the previous section. Straze simply does not have a ton of bulk, so he's unlikely to last long in a game unless you put him on something like, say, a lifesteal set. He also doesn't exactly have the best speed rating either. This means that you're commonly going to be pairing Straze with units that can help him get to his very first turn, or you're simply just going to be drafting him into spots where you know he's going to take his first turn before anyone else on the enemy team has a chance to go. It's best to think of him as your classic high risk, very high reward character. It is also important to note that Star Extinction doesn't specify that it doesn't work on elite or boss monsters. With high enough attack, Straze can penetrate 100% of the defense of many of the game's hunt bosses. This puts him in the same league as Watcher Shuri. Those two characters are commonly put together to create some of the fastest hunt clears in the entire game, most of which are not subject to any form of RNG. Strong PvP character, possibly even stronger PvE character though at the end of the day. Straze's Soul Burn is very similar to Adventurer Raz. It basically makes it so that Destructive Gaze doesn't go on cooldown for the cost of 10 souls. This is a really great soul burn if you think that Straze will live to see another turn after he fires off his S3. Basically, when he gets to his second turn, you have to make a judgment call. If you don't think Straze is going to make it to a third turn, don't soul burn the move. But if the enemy has 3 or less characters available and you also think he's going to get another turn, then it becomes a very powerful option. Again, 20% extra damage for each person missing on the enemy team. With 2 or less enemies, this move hits like an absolute truck.
Return to the void. Your ruin fast approaches.
When it comes to Molagora priorities, it's pretty straightforward for Straze. You're going to want to max his S3 Star Extinction first and foremost. No matter where you choose to play this character, whether it's in PvP, Arena, Guild Wars, World Arena, or even Hunts, Star Extinction is the moneymaker. It's the primary reason you're playing the character, so you want to max it out for the reduced cooldown as well as the extra damage. After that, it doesn't really matter what you max if you're just only playing him for PvE, although for PvP players, it's probably going to be Destructive Gaze second, because there is a good chance that you might actually use this move more than once in a game, and therefore it has higher value, at least to me, than his S1. So you want to get that damage up there. And then finally, S1 Powerful Strike, because it doesn't really offer anything other than damage. That said, as true to form with a lot of my how to plays that I talk about damage dealers, this character is meant to deal damage, which means at the end of the day, you probably should have him at plus 15. In this video, we're going to be talking about 3 builds for Straze. For 98% of you watching this video, this first one is going to end up being the one that you're going to want to choose. It is a general use PvP tank buster. Before I talk about primary sets and desired stats, I do want to actually highlight the attack stat and make it abundantly clear for how it works on this character with his S3 Star Extinction. If we take a quick look at most of the tanks that I end up actually playing here on your screen, you'll notice that Raz has around 1400 attack, Ambitious Tywin has around the 17s, Bellions is in the 18s, Unbound Knight Arwell is around 1400, Fallen Cecilia is around 1700, Troublemaker here is around 1500, Cecilia is around 1650 or so. What I'm trying to get at here is that most tanks are going to be falling between the 1400 and 1800 attack range. Star Extinction post buff maxes out its defense penetration at 2000 or more attack than the actual target. That means that the desired attack for almost every single build that you see here is going to be around 3800 or higher. As long as you exceed 2000 or more attack, you're going to be golden. Taking a look at the primary sets for this general use PvP tank buster, I am on speed immunity. Straze is a very fragile character that has some difficulty getting to his first turn. He's not exactly the bulkiest, not exactly the fastest. In the off chance that your opponent doesn't have a way to actually remove the immunity buff from the immunity set, that could be invaluable to you. It denies stuns, silences, CR pushbacks. It's not always relevant, but you're going to be glad that you're on the immunity set. And your only other real offset choices here are the critical hit chance set for easier gearing, or Torrent if you want ever so slightly more damage. So honestly, I think I'd rather just take the immunity at that point if you are able to. That's why I have chosen it as the primary one alongside a speed set. You could also obviously play an attack set or destruction set on this character. It will give you a bit more damage, but it might make the speed a bit harder to actually hit here. I leave that to you which 4-piece set you actually want to use on this character. Basically, some kind of 4-piece set that uses or gives some amount of stats. Looking at our desired stats, we have 3800 attack. This is for the reasons that I literally just illustrated with the knights. As long as you're 2000 or more attack over most knights, you'll probably be fine. I think 3850 is a fairly good spot for most people to be at. In the past, 4000 was the number. I think 3850 is pretty much the highest you really need to go. At that point, you should start probably investing in critical hit damage. Not that to say that having more attack wouldn't be good. You're just not going to be getting as much as you would up until that initial 3800 to 3850, because at that point, you're still gaining defense penetration. Looking at the defense, I have 1000. Honestly, if you only want damage, you don't care about the survivability of this character at all, you can just leave it at the base values. Health is pretty much the same story. I have 10k here, although in the past, I have played Straze with as high as 12.5k health. So if you want him to actually be able to take a hit, I would probably shoot for around 1000 defense and like 12.5k HP, assuming you don't sacrifice too many stats for trying to accomplish that. Looking at the speed, I have 240. I personally right now am playing 238, but that's because my gear is stretched really, really thin. You can go probably as low as like 230. I don't think I would go too much lower than that. And obviously, if you have a lot of speed gear laying around and you really like this character and you want him to be the best that he can be, 260 is realistically the fastest that I've seen most people play Straze. You can have pretty much no bulk, 260 speed, 3800 attack, and some level of critical hit damage. That will still work absolutely fine for this character if that's what you are trying to do. Critical hit chance is 100% because we want to make sure that our Star Extinction actually critical hits and actually kills the target. We do not want to miss on this character. I really don't think you want to skimp that much at all on Straze's critical hit chance. Again, you only really get one shot with the character. You want to make sure that it actually counts. Critical hit damage, I have 250%. That is enough where it will actually kill most things for most players. As you get towards the higher end where players have better gear, you're going to want to jump this critical hit damage up a little bit after you've broken past that 3800 or 3850 attack barrier. You're probably going to want to get a little bit more critical hit damage because it gives you more overall damage than just simply leaving it around 250 critical hit damage and just building straight attack at that point. This, again, is one of the ways you can increase your damage after you've reached that 100% defense penetration rate. Take a look at the right side. I am on a crit damage necklace, although you could play a critical hit chance necklace if the math works out for you. Ring is going to be attack percentage because we want our Star Extinction to actually kill the target. And boots, as always, here are going to be speed because we like taking turns in a timely manner. Artifact is going to be Portrait of the Saviors because it is the best generic damage increasing artifact in the game, although you could play a Symbol of Unity as well as a slew of other ones. Azure Comet is a really interesting one to highlight because it will not only make Straze's gearing process easier due to the free critical hit chance on it, but anytime someone dies, he will get a small combat readiness push, which means if you're a very aggressive player, you can have somebody like, say, a Green Sid kill somebody on the team immediately. That pushes up Straze because it procs Azure Comet. He uses S3 Star Extinction, kills another character, and that will also proc Azure Comet. It kind of helps the aggression keep flowing and allows you to very quickly churn through an enemy team. So that is definitely one that you can consider for sure. Me personally, though, I've always preferred Portrait of the Saviors. Looking at the per piece average, I am on 17% attack per piece average, 12 speed, 13% critical hit chance, and you'll notice here that I have listed as other. That is because to get the level of bulk that I'm talking about, it's some level of stats. It's like 5% defense, 3% health here. If you don't want bulk, you can skip it. And then obviously here we have 3% critical hit damage. If you want more critical hit damage on the character, then obviously you can pump that up as well. The second build that I want to talk about in this video is the one-shot build for hunts for Straze. I want to preface this section by saying that this is probably the most gear demanding character and the most gear demanding build I have ever done on a how to play video. This build is not newbie friendly. This is essentially a super late game or whale build. You will not most likely be able to hit most of these stats. I do not think I personally can hit most of these stats that are going to be here for this character. I always try to do how to plays for completeness sake. And this is the Straze build that I think is the best one when it comes to one-shotting for hunts. Because as far as I can tell based on my research, this one is the best one for Wyvern 13. It is very good for Asthmatic 13. It is very good for Katie's 13. And I believe it is also very useful for Banshee 13. One of my guildmates, Welchie, was kind enough to allow me to use some footage for this video. Through him, I was able to verify that these stat lines actually do work for at least all of the hunts outside of Golem and Banshee. So I do know for the most part that this build will work, but again, insanely high gear demand for this build to actually end up working out. When we take a look at the primary sets, we are on a rage set with a critical hit chance offset. I do not believe that there is any other way outside of rage broken set where you use any two pieces that just have insane gear for this to actually work. You need to be on a rage set. Critical hit chance will give you the most extra bonus stats, but if you do not have crazy high gear quality on those, you could use broken set as well. I am assuming for the desired stats that you are still on a triple S attack imprint, although people who are attempting this with Straze usually are using a spare Straze that may or may not have imprints, so the percentage you might actually need for this character is going to probably end up being higher if you already use this character heavily in PvP. Taking a look at the desired stats, the attack is 4,900 or better. I believe it's probably closer to somewhere around 4,930 or 4,940 for this to actually work out. We're ballparking it, though, at 4,900. Defense is 863, which is just Straze's base defense with an I-90 body. Health is 8,801. This is Straze's base health with an I-90 helmet, and I believe the artifact Daydream Joker. The speed is 128. This is non-negotiable. It has to be 128 for everything to line up correctly for you to use this Straze across all hunts. You have some wiggle room where it could be slightly faster or slightly slower based on the hunt, but 128, I believe, is the exact speed needed in order for everything to line up to use the same Straze build for all of the hunts if you were trying to do a Straze-based one-shot for every single hunt down the line. So again, 128 is where it's going to be. Critical hit chance is 100%. We do not want to miss any critical hits on our Star Extinction if we can help it. If you're only trying to use this for Asthmatic, you can drop it to 85 because obviously you will get the bonus critical hit chance there. And even then, you could go for something like, say, 92 or 93% critical hit chance. You'll obviously have a higher fail rate as a result. But again, these stats are just like ludicrous. The optimal would be obviously 100%, but I recognize that most people attempting this are probably not going to be able to get that. Critical hit damage is 335%. I have verified that it works somewhere around 338%, so 335 might not be quite high enough. If that's the case, again, you'll have to use swaps or other pieces of gear to try and eke it out and get it as close to the damage as possible. Taking a look at the right side gear, I am on a critical hit damage necklace with an attack percentage ring and attack percentage boots. These are not negotiable. Even if you wanted to use a critical hit chance necklace, I don't even think it is possible. You would have to average something like 31% critical hit damage per piece. So yeah, that doesn't seem realistic, at least not for most people watching this video. But again, this build in general doesn't seem realistic for most people watching this video. It's here largely for completeness sake. Artifact is going to be Daydream Joker because it gives you the most amount of bonus damage when trying to tackle hunts. Looking at the per piece average, you can see we are on 31% attack per piece average, which is ludicrous. To get this number down, you of course, as always, are going to need flat attack on things like your ring and your boots because their main stat is attack percentage, and therefore you cannot have it as an actual substat. Critical hit damage is 20% per piece average, and critical hit chance is 11% per piece average. And then obviously to get that 128 speed, you're still going to need to average 3 speed per piece average. Realistically, to get this to work, you're going to need a bunch of pieces that have attack percentage, crit chance, and crit damage and speed as a starting roll, and not have it ever roll into speed. That's what it's looking like in order to make this thing actually a reality. The last build in this video is going to be for you turn 2 Banshee gamers. It is a Lifesteal Bruiser Straze. Now, I want to preface this by saying, as of the recording of this video, I don't particularly think this build is very good. It used to be fairly solid back in the day when Straze first came out. You don't really see too many people try it nowadays because bruisers are just insanely tanky and the meta is just very, very aggressive. That said, I do things on how to play for completeness sake. If you remember in How to Play Landy, I talked about the very fast cleave Landy and how it was basically a meme, and I didn't really think it would be viable. And then 6 to 9 months after that video came out, that meme build ended up becoming the standard way to play the character. So again, I tried very hard to make sure that I research all the builds properly and come up with ones that I think could potentially see some play at some point. And that has led us to this Lifesteal Bruiser Straze. He is going to be on the Lifesteal set, obviously, but we have immunity as the offset for the same reasons that we talked about in the very first build. We can also play critical hit chance as an offset if we need the stats, or you could play torrent if you want more damage, although I caution you not to do that because bulk is going to end up being one of the biggest sticking points I feel like for this build. Because you're on Lifesteal set, you are sacrificing quite a number of stats from something like speed, destruction, or attack, so you need to make it up somewhere. Lowering your stats even more for the purposes of torrent set is probably not exactly going to be the very best idea. Looking at the desired stats, we are on 3,800 attack for the exact same reasons that we talked about in the very first build. You could even go slightly lower than this because the recommended artifact will be Hellcutter. You will get some of that attack made up for in Hellcutter stacks for sure. Defense, I have 1350 and the HP is 14k. I leave it to you to decide how you kind of want to approach the effective HP situation. If you want to go with like 1150 to 1200 defense with like 15 to 16k HP, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to go for like 1500 defense with like 13.5k HP, you could do that as well. Just as long as you have some measure of actual bulk on the character so that way he can actually take a hit, therefore being able to actually lifesteal it back. If he can't actually take a hit, there's no point in him being on lifesteal. He actually have to survive a hit or two and then heal it back up with his enormous damage on his S3 or his S2 to actually make this practical and make it actually work. Speed is 185. I would not go too much lower than this on the character. In my experience, anything below 180 speed in the current format needs to be extremely tanky, whether that is like a knight or a bruiser with HP scaling, something that has a ton of HP. And if you're not that, like Lionheart Sirmia, the only viable way I feel like for you to survive is to have some kind of artifact like Durandal or Proof of Valor. We are hard locked into playing Hellcutter on this build because we are just giving up too many stats already to be on the Lifesteal set. So 185 I think is the absolute slowest I would go on this character. If you can get more speed, then by all means go for it. Critical hit chance is 77%. That is because we are on the Hellcutter artifact. We are trying to leverage Hellcutter to give us the extra critical hit chance that we're missing and give us a ton of free attack as well. The reason why it is 77% is because at the 185 speed threshold in most matches, this character is going to usually be going either 6th, 7th, or 8th, which means that 5 people are going to be going before him, which is about 5 stacks, 20% critical hit chance, and then obviously his own turn procs it as well, which will give you the final 24th percentage that you are missing, which will give you 101% critical hit chance, allowing you to make sure that your Star Extinction actually goes off and you will actually kill the target that you are trying to kill. That is the reason why we are on 77% critical hit chance. Critical hit damage is 250%. If you want to go higher, by all means you can go for it. Because this is a Hellcutter build, you will essentially have way higher attack than even the desired stats indicate. So if you wanted to go like 3650 or 3700, skimp a little bit to get more critical hit damage, you are more than welcome to do that, because the Hellcutter should still keep you in line in order to get the maximum amount of penetration on your Star Extinction. Taking a look at the right side, we are going to be on a crit damage necklace, although you could still play a critical hit chance necklace on this one if you so choose. Ring is attack percentage because we are trying to do as much damage as possible. And then boots are going to be speed. Looking at the artifact, we are on Hellcutter for the exact same reasons that I ended up talking about before. Looking at the per piece average, I have 16% attack, 17% defense, 15% health, and 9% critical hit chance per piece average, with a couple of extras sprinkled out here or there with things like 6 speed. Straze is the definition of a glass cannon tank buster, so he's primarily only really going to be played in very aggressive or cleave style compositions. The biggest hurdle that the character has is that he cannot usually get to his first turn safely, or he might not actually have enough attack to actually guarantee that his S3 Star Extinction has maximum penetration rate and get through some of the tankier characters in the game. Therefore, most of the time, the best teammate choices for him are characters that provide him not only extra damage, but some level of combat readiness push. Characters like Closer Charles, top model Lulika after her most recent round of buffs, Flan, and even a character like Amelia are all amazing options to pair with Straze, because they give him, again, what he's looking for. Either attack buff or critical hit damage buff, and some level of combat readiness manipulation. Other characters that I want to highlight in this section are Watcher Shuri and Green Vildred. These are characters that are not only commonly played with Straze in PvE hunts. In the case of Watcher Shuri, he's usually found in almost every single hunt with Straze, and Green Vildred is usually found in either, say, Azimatic 13 or very rarely something like Banshee. These characters, again, very good in PvE with Straze, but they also have a speed imprint, which again does help Straze with his biggest weakness. He needs to be able to get to his first turn safely in order to use the S3 Star Extinction. Using a bunch of speed imprints on your team, it might be possible, even without combat readiness pushing, for Straze to actually take the turn and therefore do his job. The good matchups for Straze are incredibly obvious once you know what his S3 Star Extinction does. He excels against very high health enemies that don't exactly have the highest amount of attack. Basically, it's going to be the Arius holders, characters like Adventurer Raz, Unbound Knight Arwell, and Fallen Cecilia. These three are the ones you're most commonly picking your Straze into, because he most likely kills them in one shot. There are a couple of other characters that also fall in this same category based on how they're built. You have a good matchup against characters like Mediator Kowarik and sometimes even Apocalypse Ravi, depending on the stats on that character, as well as any kind of attack buff that Straze may have on his actual team. The last good matchup that I want to actually highlight here is actually Savior Aiden, who is the newest specialty change as of the recording of this video. Savior Aiden has a counter mechanic where she uses an AoE attack whenever she dodges. Star Extinction cannot trigger a counter attack. However, if Aiden were to actually dodge Star Extinction, whether this is a bug or not, it will not actually trigger her counter, and it will put that move on cooldown. Again, I'm not sure if this is a bug as of the recording of this video, but currently, as it works on the live version of the game, Star Extinction can be used to shut down Savior Aiden's counter. To wrap up the video, let's talk about Straze's bad matchups. If we could summarize his good matchups as slow and tanky, then we could summarize the bad matchups as very fast and disruptive. For disruptive characters that are fast, think of things like Conqueror Lilius and Lua. Conqueror Lilius can give attack down to Straze, which makes his Star Extinction far less potent. You most likely will not be able to hit that max penetration rate and therefore not be able to do your job. She also has a Provoke built into her kit, which again makes it so it's very difficult for him to do his job on his very first turn. And he's not exactly built for a long fight, so he's probably going to get picked off as a result. Lua can obviously sleep him, and obviously, again, reset the cooldown on Star Extinction. It's not just limited to debuffers, though. Characters like Green Sid as well as Kuwarik are also incredibly good against Straze. Green Sid is pretty much a terror in high-end arena at this point. He is very fast, provides a speed imprint to his team, making sure that his team is going to get that first turn, and his S3 one-shots most characters in the game. Even something like Apocalypse Ravi is not exactly safe from him. And Kuwarik, when combined with Tehegel's Ancient Book, his Soul Burn can reset or outright kill a lot of characters that are very squishy. So Straze is just really not suited for that matchup either. You're either going to die or you're just going to have all your cooldowns reset, so you're not going to be able to use Star Extinction anyway. The last two that I want to highlight here are Senya as well as Troublemaker Crozet. One of the primary ways for people to counter Straze in the past was to build a very high HP Senya. If Senya is most likely the highest HP unit on the team, that's bad news for Straze because she usually clocks in somewhere around 6,000 attack, which means you're never really going to get that max penetration rate against her. That's really, really bad. You're not going to get a whole heck of a lot of value out of your Star Extinction, in which case she'll just turn around and provoke lock your Straze and he's probably going to die. So that one is definitely one that you want to be cognizant of if you think she is the highest health character on the enemy team. Another one is, again, like I said, Troublemaker Crozet. Troublemaker Crozet provides a damage share with whatever character is in the back. If the character in the back line is the highest health enemy hero, 40% of the damage from Star Extinction will go to the Troublemaker Crozet. A fun strategy that a lot of people like to do is take an Arius Holder and Troublemaker Crozet, and if you don't ban the Troublemaker Crozet, put the Arius Holder in the back, and therefore cancel out most of the damage that your Star Extinction is going to do, because it will split basically all the damage 50-50. Troublemaker Crozet will take probably about half, the Arius Holder will take about half, and at that point, since that is your biggest tank busting move, they probably can sustain the game from there and end up winning and taking it for their team. And that is going to do it for how to play Straze. As always, if I missed anything, please let me know down in the comments section below. If you want to see more how to play guides done in this very same style, there should be a playlist on your screen now. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye-bye now.